tortured, starved, and beaten to death at the age of 24 in an alien land. This is the heartbreaking story of Piang Ngaih Don, who spent the last 12 days of her life on the bedroom floor, with her wrist tied to a window grill. Her life, marked by painful losses and hardships, shows just unfair and cruel life can be to some people. Piang was born on 13 June 1992 to two farmers in Dimpi, a tiny rural village with a population of only about 1,500 people in one of the poorest states in Myanmar. This village is so remote that it can be reached only after a 4-hour drive along a muddy road from the nearest town. There's no running water, very little to eat, and only grinding poverty. Piang was no stranger to adversities. She lost her parents within a year of each other when she was just 4. She and her 10 siblings eked out a living by farming the land her parents left behind, and she had to drop out of school after the 9th grade at the age of 15. Another hardship awaited her. In the early 2010s, she met a man and later became pregnant, but he left her before she gave birth to her son as a single mother in February 2013. Apart from farming, she also took up a job as a construction worker, but the pay was too low. She then heard about higher wages in Singapore and became excited at the prospect of earning enough money after working as a maid for 2 or 3 years, and buying a plot of land in her home country to build a house for her and her son. There was one problem: she was a couple of months shy of reaching the age of 23, the minimum legal age for one to work as a foreign domestic worker in Singapore. Piang paid her agent to bribe an immigration officer to change her date of birth 2 months earlier to 13 April 1992, a common practice among agents who take about 8 months' salaries of the workers they recruit. Leaving her son behind in the care of her older sister and dreaming of building a better life for her son and family, she arrived in Singapore in May 2015 after a long, arduous journey from her village. But her humble dream soon turned into a nightmare. Upon arrival, then 22-year-old Piang found employment as a maid for a 35-year-old woman named Gayatri Murugayan, who was married to Kevin Chalbam, a 37-year-old police staff sergeant from the Singapore Police Force. Gayatri had 2 young children, then aged 1 and 4, and her elderly mother Prima as Narayanasamy often stayed over to help cook and take care of the children. Piang, the 5th maid to work for this household, began her first day of work on 28 May 2015. Conditions of her employment were harsh. She was not allowed to have any day off or to have a mobile phone, as her employer did not want her to have contact with other foreign domestic helpers. She also had to wear multiple face masks while working and to shower and relieve herself with the bathroom door open as her employer watched. Gayatri soon became disgruntled with Piang, thinking she was unhygienic, too slow, and ate too much. At first, she would shout to vent her anger when she thought Piang was not following her stringent rules to the letter. But as is often the case, her verbal abuse escalated to physical abuse about 5 months later in October 2015. Most of the horrific abuse Piang suffered in the last month before her death was captured by the CCTV camera the husband originally set up to monitor his maid and children. The footage showed Piang being abused by Gayatri and her mother daily, often several times a day, by pouring cold water on her, slapping, pushing, punching, kicking, and stomping on her while she was lying prone on the floor, assaulting her with a plastic bottle or a metal ladle, lifting her off the floor by the hair, grabbing and pulling out a clump of her hair, shaking her violently like a ragdoll, and choking her. On one occasion when Piang was ironing clothes, Gayatri pressed a hot iron against her forehead and then to her forearm as punishment for burning some of the clothes. At no time was Piang seen trying to defend herself or fighting back. This was not all. She was allowed to sleep only for about 5 hours each night and to eat just sliced bread soaked in water, cold food straight from the fridge, or a little bit of rice at night, and was assaulted when the starving victim was found rummaging through the garbage can for food. One can imagine just how starved she was, for she lost 15 kilos or 33 pounds, accounting for 38% of her body weight during 14 months of her employment. Despite not having a mobile phone, Piang managed to make 5 phone calls to her family back home. During her first 4 phone calls, she did not utter a word of complaint about her job, and her family had no idea of her suffering. But in her 5th call made on 12 July 2016, 2 weeks before her death, she said that she did not feel well and wanted to return home. This would be the last time she spoke to her family. Shortly after this final call, Piang had her hand tied to the window grill at night while she slept on the floor. and this continued through the final 12 days of her life, in addition to the other forms of daily abuse. On the night of 25 July 2016, her last on earth, the violence inflicted on her turned particularly brutal. Punching her with a clenched fist and pulling her hair, Ngaih Don told her to work faster. As Piang swayed on her feet, Ngaih Don told her not to dance and struck her head with a detergent bottle. After falling on her back, Piang became disoriented and could not get up. Ngaih Don called her mother over, and together they assaulted Piang and threw cold water on her. After dragging her across the kitchen and living room to the bedroom, Ngaih Don kicked her in the stomach, and Prema punched and choked her. Ngaih Don tied Piang's wrist to the window grill just before midnight, kicked her belly, and left her on the floor in wet clothes. When she begged her employer not to tie her, Ngaih Don told her she deserved it for sneaking out at night to steal food from the kitchen. At around 5 the next morning, Ngaih Don tried to wake her up, but when she did not stir, she proceeded to kick and stomp on Piang's head and neck repeatedly. She then lifted her up by her hair, and pulled her head so hard that her neck was wrenched backwards twice, and choked her. She was unresponsive by this time, but Ngaih Don believed she simply did not want to wake up. At around 7:30, she found Piang still lying motionless on the floor and tried to revive her, but failed. Ngaih Don called a clinic about 2 hours later and asked for a house call, lying that she found her maid on the kitchen floor. She refused the clinic's suggestion to call an ambulance, and while waiting for a doctor to arrive, she and her mother changed Piang out of her wet clothes and carried her to the sofa. Oh, and Prema also asked her son-in-law to get rid of the CCTV cameras. Upon arrival, the doctor saw the victim lying on the sofa with her mouth open, no pulse, and her pupils fixed and dilated. The doctor called the police and an ambulance, and she was pronounced dead at 11:30 a.m. The cause of her death was brain injury incurred by repeated choking that led to oxygen deprivation to the brain, along with severe blunt trauma to her neck. An autopsy found a total of 31 recent scars and 47 external injuries, no food in her stomach, and the victim was so emaciated and undernourished that she would soon have died of starvation. Piang weighed only 24 kilograms, or about 53 pounds, at the time of her death, less than the average weight of an 8-year-old girl. Ngaih Don and her mother were immediately arrested and charged with first-degree murder, an offense warranting the death penalty under Singapore law. While remanded in prison, they both underwent psychiatric assessments that dragged on for 4 years. And Ngaih Don was found to have suffered from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder and postpartum depression, which impaired her mental responsibility at the time of her repeated abuse and murder of Piang. As a result, the first-degree murder charge was reduced to first-degree culpable homicide, which warrants a sentence of life imprisonment or up to 20 years imprisonment. Throughout her trials, Ngaih Don's defense team attempted to use her mental disorders as an excuse for impairing her rationality, and argued that the accused struggled to cope with her children's poor health, which she blamed on the maid's unhygienic habits, such as not washing her hands before touching cooked food. In her first trial held on 23 February 2021, the prosecution sought the maximum sentence of life imprisonment, stating that even such words as heinous, cruel, and inhuman were not enough to fully express the atrocity of her crimes. On 22 June 2021, the judge sentenced the accused to 30 years imprisonment, declaring that if not for her mental disorders, he would not have hesitated to put her behind bars for the rest of her life, and also underscored her lack of remorse for committing one of the most heinous instances of abuse and culpable homicide in Singapore's history. She appealed, arguing that the original sentence did not give due weight to her repentance, remorse, and psychiatric conditions that caused her to snap. The court dismissed her appeal, agreeing with the ruling of the first trial that found the accused completely unremorseful and unrepentant over her murder of Piang, given that she attempted to justify her actions with her psychiatric disorders, and kept blaming anything and anyone but herself for her atrocities. Ngaih Don then said she would write to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, declaring she cannot die in prison. During the first trial of Ngaih Don's mother, then 64-year-old Prema Ngaih, held on 9 January 2023, prosecution sought a sentence of between 14 and 16 years of imprisonment. given the role she played in turning the deceased's life into a living nightmare. Prema's lawyer asked for 10 years imprisonment, claiming that the accused was a loving grandmother who was unfairly portrayed as a vile and wicked person, arguing that she abused Piang only after hearing her daughter's complaints, and tried to highlight instances where Prema was kind to Piang by giving her food and treating her wounds. She was sentenced to 14 years imprisonment, and in her second trial, for the charge of causing evidence of a murder case to disappear by instigating her son-in-law to get rid of the CCTV camera footage of abusing Piang, judge sentenced her to another 3 years imprisonment. She served consecutively to her first sentence, totaling 17 years. Kivanchalbam was arrested in August 2016 for attempting to remove evidence of his family's horrific treatment of Piang, and faces 4 charges for his role in her abuse and death. Currently out on bail, he is said to have been fully aware of the atrocities that occurred under his roof, and the prosecution intend to use WhatsApp messages between him and his wife to show that he endorsed starving the maid as a form of punishment. Following Piang's tragic death, Singapore's Ministry of Manpower gave a full insurance payout, including death benefit, repatriation costs, and a special gratuity payment to her bereaved family members. Since Ngaih Don's trial, more than 2,500 donors in Singapore have raised a total of over 200,000 Singapore dollars in just 6 days for Piang's family and for her son, Mung Lam Twang, who had been just a baby when his mother left him behind in the care of her older sister, with the hope of providing him with a better life. In Piang's last phone talk with her family, when she voiced her wish to return home, she had asked if her brother, Paul Shin Mung, could pick her up from Yangon, about 1,000 kilometers from their home village. Instead, her brother had to travel to Singapore in early August 2016 with financial aid from non-governmental organizations to bring his sister's body back home. A Catholic church volunteer and farmer, he said that he forgives his sister's murderers, adding, "The law will take its own course." He also stated that he would bury his sister near their parents in Dimpi, and let his nephew know how his mother died when he was old enough, and also teach him to be kind to others and to forgive, instead of repaying evil with evil. Piang's siblings have erected a simple cross in their village in memory of their sister. Her case is not the only instance of sickening abuse and exploitation of foreign domestic workers in Singapore. Prosecution described the murder of Piang and the violence inflicted on her as a function of the accused, viewing the victim as a lesser human being. The employers, the ones with power, perhaps find it easy to abuse their foreign maids, who are often from impoverished countries, underaged, and cut off from their family, friends, and the rest of the world, regarding them as lesser beings and not even worthy of basic human decency. Do you think Ngaih Don's inhuman abuse of Piang was a result of her mental disorders, as she claimed, or did she become intoxicated by her power and found her maid an easy victim who just took all the abuse inflicted on her? Thanks for watching, and please share your thoughts in the comment section. May Piang rest in eternal peace.